Hi, welcome back to Box of Delights. We're playing Cruel Necessity from Victory Point Games. In this series, I'm going to be giving you an instructional playthrough. The game's been developed by Alan Emmerich for Victory Point Games from a design by John Welch. It's a solitaire game simulating the English Civil Wars, which ran from 1640 to 53. As we set up the game, I'll give you a brief summary of what this game is trying to simulate. The English Civil Wars are a very complicated period of our history, but a wonderfully interesting part of our history. I'm sure you're familiar with names like Charles I and Oliver Cromwell, but if you don't know the history, this is when Oliver Cromwell emerges from the English people as a future leader of the country. Charles I at the time was our monarch, and he didn't like being answerable to Parliament. Parliament represented the needs of the people, so say. Okay, maybe that wasn't wholly entirely true that they represented the people, because they were made up of the aristocracy and people with titles, but also there was a second house made up of the town burgesses, people who lived in each town, and the knights of the shire. And because these far outnumbered the aristocracy and the people with titles, some sort of selection had to exist to limit their numbers, and what emerged was elective representation, which in turn meant that the throne gradually lost control of those who sat in the Commons. So they were increasingly free of the control of the monarchy, which Charles I didn't like. The Stuarts, of which Charles I was a Stuart, they believed that they were kind of gods on earth, if you like, that they ruled with that single unquestionable authority. But as things in this period are very complicated, but the long and short of it is that the king needed money. He wanted to go and fight some wars. He'd just finished a war with Spain. He now wanted to exert some pressure on Scotland, and he had to go cap in hand to Parliament to get money. And of course they were willing to give it to him if he was willing to do something for them. But Charles I wasn't a man to make concessions to Parliament. He was this ordained by God, this leader of the country. He didn't have to answer to anyone. So he disbanded Parliament. And this is causing lots of different problems. And this is where Cromwell emerges as a parliamentarian leader, because what they're saying is that in order for the king to raise money now for his wars without Parliament, he's having to raise money via taxation. And this was unjust in their eyes, because only taxation that's been approved by the people through Parliament is a just tax. So they were accusing the king of treason against his own people. So the trouble here is that we've got lots of different interplaying things as well. So there wasn't just this battle between monarchy and Parliament, but the Parliament was primarily made up of Protestants who were what we call the Puritans. These were, I guess, I don't know, my knowledge of these things isn't very strong, but my understanding is they were kind of a little bit more strict in their religious code, and they weren't. King Charles was Protestant, but the Puritans believed that the king didn't take things, or the Reformation didn't take things far enough, and they didn't like the fact that the monarchy were, let's say, tolerant of Catholicism, not strict enough on Catholicism. This is obviously complicated more by the situation in Ireland, and I think Charles I's wife was Catholic too. So you've got all these conflicting things, and this game is trying to model them, and okay, it's not going to be an accurate reflection of history, but what they do very well is model that interplay of all these different forces working against each other. So you've got these tracks, and you see I've set up these track markers here for the start of the game. You've got Puritanism against Catholicism, the monarchy against Parliament, and then the influence of Ireland against the influence of Scotland, working against you, and you play the parliamentary guys. These are the Roundheads, if you like, and the Royalists are who you're working against. You're working against Charles I and the monarchy and against Catholicism. Okay, this is the main map where things are going to play out. And each of these regions of England and Ireland, Scotland and Wales has a fortress. Wales isn't going to play too much of a part here in terms of fortresses. But at the start of the game, you're kind of the blue and your opponents, the Royalists, are red. Parliament's going to hold London, and we represent this by placing one of these double-sided fortresses here. So blue side up, because the parliamentarians hold London. And there's a little blue dot here, and this shows you where to place these. So these have a little gap in. They're like a little timer that you can a little click around. You see, to change the value, so 2 clockwise tick takes it to 3. Right, but the blue dot here shows you where to set this for the start of the game. Oxford is, it's got a red dot, so we'll place it red on the 4. So that's under Royalist control. Bristol here is blue, number 2. Hull, blue 2. What else have we got? Edinburgh and Dublin. So Edinburgh is under our control, and Dublin is under Royalist control. Okay, so the influence of the monarchy is strong over here, and Scotland, they're kind of on our side because, I mean, the thing is that the Stuarts were trying to unite England and Scotland into a single empire, and that happened after Queen Elizabeth I died with no heir, and James the Sixth of Scotland, James I became a single monarch. So he was the first of the Stuart kings, became a single monarch of England and Scotland. So Charles, his descendant, was very keen on this united kingdom. By the end of these civil wars, what he ended up with was not necessarily a united kingdom, but a united republic. All of your forces are going to be pulled from the people. You know, you're going to have local leaders who are on the side of Parliament who are going to be recruiting locally to defend these fortresses and the war against the monarchy. So these civil wars, and it's plural because there was a series of wars, and this game will simulate first, second and third English civil wars. In this playthrough I'm just going to give you the first. That was 1640 to 44, and really that period is more like a prologue to the wars and things just starting to bubble up. Anyway, so you're pulling your people, your fighting forces from the people. So there's no units here on the map that represent your forces because they're all over. But the Royalists, there's 4 armies. So there's an army in the southwest, and they start in Cornwall. There's an army in the north, starting in Durham. An army in Ireland, starting in beyond the Pale, this region here. And then there's an army in Scotland, the Royalist army in the Highlands of Scotland. So each of these regions, so this is the Scotland region, they have numbers 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And this represents the army who in each region starts in the region numbered 5. They're going to march towards the region number 1. And once they hit the region number 1, they're going to start pushing this army forwards. Likewise, the west here, they're going to march towards London. Okay, and the aim of the game is for you to defend London. If these forces start invading London and this starts clicking down and reduced to 0, you lose the game. So Parliament's job is to hold on to London. Okay. The problem for these warring armies is that along the way they're going to hit one of these fortresses. And when they hit these fortresses, if they're under your control, then you're going to hold up this army. They're going to have to besiege this fortress, take control of it, and only then can they continue to march towards London. So your aim, as well as holding up these armies directly, is to fortify these positions, which acts as this wall, this buffer to them marching on London and kicking out Parliament. The Irish army over here, when they get down to 1, then we have the Irish troubles, and that starts to influence what's happening over in England. At the start of the game, this is placed here, and then should the Irish army activate when it's at the one spot, then this will start having a negative impact on these tracks. We've got a few more tokens we need to place on the board before we get going. We have a strength token that will either add one or take one away from the strength of the Scottish or Irish armies. These what we call foreign armies. They just begin the game in these little holding spots. The zeal marker, this is going to be your ability to act, is going to be through spending points. So on your turn, so we're going to play the game's going to go through a series of turns. You're going to be spending zeal points, and the number of zeal points you have is based on how successful, how influential Parliament is right now. It starts the game here at this 5 spot. We'll learn how you spend and earn more zeal points as the game goes on, and there's a little adjustment marker here as well. We'll just place it here in this little holding spot for now. So we'll grab some cards. So we're going to start the first Civil War, and we need to pull out all these event cards. They have this bronze border, and there's 2 cards within this set. One is numbered number 1 and one is numbered number 27. Everything else in between, number 2 to 26. They're going to form a random sequence, but these represent the real events that took place in history and the events that are going to drive the game forward each turn. But bookending this event pile is number 1 and number 27. So they're fixed in position, and they've got this white circle so you can spot them easily. So we'll shuffle this lot, we'll place these at either end. Okay, so 27 and 1 on the top, 27 on the bottom. Okay, and these get placed here in this draw pile. Alright, and as we learn the game, we'll see these things play out. There's a whole bunch more. So we have a set of gold cards and a set of silver cards. The gold ones represent the third Civil War from 49 to 53, and the silver ones the second Civil War from 45 to 49. So these will go back in the box, but if you want to play through from beginning to end, you can play first, second, third as a series, or if you want a shorter experience, you can just pick one of these wars and play it standalone. Lastly, we have these battle event cards, and we'll give these a shuffle, and these go here on this battle events draw pile on this second board. This is called the battle display mat, and although the overall action of the game is going over here on the map and on these political tracks, the battle display map is used for individual tactical battles that go on. Okay, so we'll show you tactical battles as the game develops. But for now, all we need to do is just finish setting up this part of the game, and that's really the last thing we do. So these blue tokens here, these represent your forces. These are the forces who are loyal to Parliament, and these with the royal flag, the red ones, these represent the royalist forces. We've also got a handful of named units for Parliament, and these are individual armies which, remember I told you that the Parliament armies, they come from the people. Well, we've also got a few individually named armies. These only come into play when a particular event card calls for them. So for example, we have Cromwell and his new model army. The others, they need to be placed face down and shuffled, because one of the problems that you had leading an army during the Civil War is you never really knew who was going to turn up for your side. Alright, these square ones represent cavalry, these rectangular ones represent your infantry, which were musket and pike units. So these are kind of randomised, so who's going to turn up on the day and fight your battle, it depends on who's local to where the army is being fought. So it's a bit of an unknown. So these are going to be drawn randomly until those named units come into play via event cards. Then these named units, they stay out of play. Okay. And the same for the Royalist armoury, so they have a draw pool of cavalry and a draw pool of musket and pike units, infantry units. Because every time you fight a tactical battle, you're going to be drawing forces out of here. They're going to get used. We're going to play out the tactical battle, and then we'll put them back in the draw pool for the next tactical battle. Okay, we're pretty much set up and ready to go. I mean, the only other bits and pieces we need is there's some random tokens here that we're going to be used during the game, and these tokens here, but I'll keep them in the box for now. These ones are only used when called for, so we'll just keep those in the box for now, but we do need a couple of dice. So we've got a couple of 6-sided dice here as well. Before we begin the first turn of the game and I show you actually how the gameplay works, because we're going to learn to play this as we play, this is just a quick mention of these tokens on the political tracks. These are the Royalist ones, okay, and they're in positions A, B, C, D, F. These are the forces of, what do they call them, godly rule and republicanism. A, B, C, D, F. So this section here is your section of the political track. This is the Royalist section of the political track. There's a line here representing the fact that your political track markers, which will go up and down, will not go beyond. But you can also see they've got numbers in, and they've got these triangles in. These blue triangles represent victory points for you. These red triangles represent negative victory points for you. So these give you an impression of how well you're doing. If you can push these markers up, what that means is the influence of Scotland is having a positive effect on the Republican cause, the influence of Parliament and the influence of Puritanism. Likewise, pushing these up means that they're having Ireland, monarchy, Catholicism are having less of an impact on the running of the country. These come towards the middle, then that's bad for you. These things are having a stronger influence. The numbers that are circled are the starting positions. As they move up and down, and I'll show you how that happens during the gameplay, but if these things should hit their bottom spots, they can't go down any further. Instead, they'll start pushing these other markers, the ones that are opposite them, down. So once monarchy is at its strongest, if monarchy should get stronger, it can't move any further, but it means the influence of Parliament will start reducing instead. Okay, so you can see how these things kind of work against each other, and that's a great way that the designers have modelled these conflicting forces in what is a complex situation. Right, the first thing we're going to do is draw the top card of the event deck, and this will give you a prologue to the First English Civil War. This deck is going to act as a timer, so if we manage to get through the end here and we've not lost the game, then we can count up our victory points and determine, did we earn enough victory points to actually count as a win, and if we did, how well did we win or how badly did we lose. So that's one thing, you know, the same cards are going to come out in every game. What you don't know is the order in which they're going to come out. So as you get more experience with this game, you can develop strategies, you start to learn, you know, what numbers of events are coming out and impacting which areas of the map. So this prologue, I won't read it all, but it starts to tell us that for 15 years Charles's subjects have become more alienated by his religious policies and his desire to rule without Parliament. It tells us that in 1641 the Catholics of Ireland rose up in arms, brutally killing many hundreds of English and Scottish Protestants who had settled in Ireland. The rebellions caused panic in England, making it harder than ever for political compromises to be reached and the nation's problems solved. England was rapidly developing into two powerful armed groups. And the first thing we do is we turn over this card and we act this event out from top to bottom. This first card is what's called an event card. The other type of cards you can see are called achievement cards, and we'll come to those and explain them if and when they get drawn. Achievements are things that you can earn, and earning achievements is the way to get lots of victory points and really heavily influence your score. All we need to do now is execute this event card from top to bottom. It starts by telling us that in August 1640, needing to secure funds to raise a new army to stop the Scottish invasion after the defeat of the English army at Newburn, King Charles calls for a session of Parliament. The first thing we need to do is activate the Scottish Army. The Scottish Army, remember, starts in the number 5 spot of Scotland in the Highlands, and now we have to activate this army. Unfortunately, we get a player aid, and this tells us what happens when an army activates. Okay, if you see one of these red icons, remember we saw the black one, if it's the red one followed by a cannon, then we have a tactical battle. We don't, we just have this black one, so that means we activate the army, and it's the Scotland army that we're activating. And the first thing we do is we can recover from disorder. So if an army has got 2 sides, okay, this is a regular side, if an army is disordered it goes onto this side. So if this army activates and is disordered, it would flip back up to this side. This is this kind of strength, this number. Okay. So it would do that, and this is an OR. So if it's not disordered, it goes to number 2. It says combat a clubman revolt. We'll come to that if and when it happens. There's no clubman revolt, but remember I showed you some of these tokens. These are the clubman. This is their revolt tokens. Okay, so we don't have that situation. Next, we would besiege a parliamentary fortress. So if this army had moved into Edinburgh, where there is a fortress, then it would now besiege it. Edinburgh is number 4, so we're going to get there a little bit sooner than elsewhere. Okay, but we're not there yet, so we don't besiege a fortress. And finally, then, is the advance, and that's what we're going to do here. We're going to advance to the next lower numbered area. Okay? Remember the event card told us how Charles I was keen to get some money, so he's recalled Parliament to get some funds to helpfully support his war and crush the Scots. So the Scottish Army advances forward into the number 4 spot. So that's that part of the event card done. And we move down. It says that the diminutive Archbishop Laud attempts to impose a new Anglican prayer book on the Scots, but the Scottish bishops strongly oppose its introduction. All we do to act this out is we move the monarchy marker down 1 spot. So this is Charles exerting his influence. We move the marker 1 spot down. Remember, this is always bad for us, okay? This thing moving down is bad for us. People were still loyal to the crown, and these civil wars really did divide families. You might have one brother who was in Parliament and his brother was loyal to the king. They ended up as brothers fighting each other. It was crazy, really. Okay, next step is the Scottish Kirk, or Church, signs the covenant to reject the Books of Common Prayer. So the Scottish Church, they're not keen on this new prayer book. What we're going to do now is it's got this +1 DRM token on Parliament. So I go back to the supply and I grab one of these tokens. These tokens are either affecting strength, positively or negatively, these green ones, or these yellow ones, positively or negatively, DRMs. DRM stands for the Dice Roll Modifier. So this goes on Parliament. What that means is, when it comes to our turn and we're spending zeal points to take actions, one of the things we can do is move these tracks. And we do this by rolling a die. If we roll a number which is greater than the number printed on the political track, then we can push this thing up the track. This +1 DRM, die roll modifier, means that when we roll our die to get higher than a 3 or a 4, we can add 1 to the result. And that's the end of our event. Notice that each of these has like a title. So this one says Scots defeat English army at the Battle of Newburn. So this begins our game. Once we've completed our event, now it's time for us to start spending zeal points and taking actions. So here's our zeal points. We're currently at 5. And once more, our player aid tells us the list of player actions we can take. Let's try and do something about that business up in Scotland. And also, I think that with this dice roll modifier on Parliament, it's a good opportunity to try and increase the influence of Parliament. And for the sake of the video, I'm just going to grab myself a couple of larger dice. But let's spend 1 zeal point, so we move our tracker down to 4. And what we'll try and do is push this army back into the Highlands. If we don't, the next time Scotland activates, it's going to try and besiege Edinburgh. So how do we push this thing back from Edinburgh, zone number 4, to the Highlands, zone number 5. Well, we have to roll a die. We spent a zeal point to campaign against an enemy army unit, and we need to roll, see this number here, this is strength 3, we need to roll higher than that. And I want to roll a 4, 5 or 6 to push this thing back into the Highlands. There we go, we got a 6, so we've managed to push the Royalist army out of Edinburgh back into the Highlands. So you can see the mechanisms of the game are pretty basic, but that's what's good about this. There's a lot, you're not getting bogged down in lots of different rules. There's a lot going on the map, and that's enough for you to deal with, to understand your objective of trying to keep these advancing armies away from London and to keep these political tracks away from down here. So and once you start playing, and these die rolls, obviously they add that luck element, which is going to give you the yes moments and the look what just happened moments when you roll a 1. Let's spend another zeal point and fortify a friendly fortress. I'm going to fortify Edinburgh. So if we look at Edinburgh Fortress, we can see that it's currently clicked in at number 2 for the start of the game. So this time we spent our zeal point, we've clicked this round to number 3. And what that means is when the Scottish, the Royalist army in Scotland advances on Edinburgh and starts to besiege it, it's got more work to do to push this round and advance beyond Edinburgh. The other important thing is that you cannot fortify unless the Cavaliers, the Royalist army, is in a higher numbered region. Okay, so it's important I push these Royalists, these Cavaliers, back to the Highlands, because I couldn't have fortified if they were here. Alright, they have to be in a higher numbered region. And notice too, there's no die roll this time, it's an automatic success to fortify. Now let's engage in some politics, because we want to take advantage of this dice roll modifier. So again, we spend 1 zeal point, and this time we're going to try and move Parliament up. And to do so, we need to roll a die higher than the number on the square we're moving to. So we need to roll higher than a 3. Of course, we got our +1 die roll modifier. Incidentally, if we fail, nothing happens, right? Everything just stays as it was. All we've done is we've lost a zeal point. Okay. This is about managing your zeal points and deciding what to do with them. We've just squeezed a win because of the DRM, but a 2 or a 1 and it would have been a fail. So there's a big push your luck element here. With the +1 DRM, we're successful, this goes up. We could try and do it again, so let's use 1 more zeal point. So off we go, we're looking for a 3 or higher. It's a 1, we've failed. So we tried to enact some parliamentary reforms, but we failed to get the support of the House. You've got to decide where you want to spend these points and what's going to be most beneficial. For me, I think I'd rather spend a zeal point and push Parliament up 1 more spot. Let's try this roll once more. Okay, and it was successful. So this time our reforms went through. You'll notice too that in the Parliament and Monarchy section, and also in the religious one, there's these grey outlines, these marked out areas. We call this the middle ground, and in this middle ground you can only ever have 1 token at a time. So if I'd made it into this middle ground, what that means is Monarchy couldn't now come into its lowest point. Instead, if Monarchy would advance, but there's already Parliament in the middle ground, instead it pushes Parliament back, kind of clearing the way then for Monarchy to advance next time. Okay, so these middle grounds here are really important for stopping the monarchy or Catholicism advancing towards their final states. Now that we've spent all our zeal points, then that's the action phase completed, and now we go into the end time phase. This is where you just check for that losing condition or victory condition. If the event deck is now empty, you've played out the final event prior to your actions, then the game is over and you've hit the victory condition. If you don't control London at this point, then you've lost the game. Or if you've got 4 or more what they call F grades. So what that means is if 4 or more political track markers are in these F spots here or here, then you immediately lose the game. We're obviously not at that stage yet, so we're fine there. So now we move into this housekeeping phase, and this is where we remove all temporary strength or dice roll modifiers. So this one goes. Now we have to gain our zeal points and reset our zeal track. Now we gain zeal points for controlling, and there's a little bit of text on the board to remind you. Plus, it says 1 zeal for Bristol, 3 for London, 1 for Oxford, which we don't control, and 1 for Hull. So we've got 3, 4, 5 zeal points. Now it is possible that if we wanted to, on the last turn, we might not have wanted to spend all. We could have saved a couple. So we could have gone down to 2 and just left it there. And that means that then, when we get our 5 new ones, we would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, back up to 7 instead. But there's a maximum of 9. So you don't want to save too many, because then they'll just get wasted. Okay. You can also get zeal points for having Catholicism at its highest point. So you push this right back, there you get +1 zeal. But similarly, you'll get -1 zeal if Puritanism is right down the bottom here in its F grade spot. And that's it. Once you've reset your zeal points, that's the round over, and you proceed to the next round by drawing a new event card. We'll leave it here for this episode. Join me next time as we continue Cruel Necessity, the English Civil Wars.